Before we begin, if you love stories where humanity shocks the galaxy and proves its strength, make sure to hit that like button. Comment your favorite apex predator down below. Maybe it'll show up in a future story. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next chapter in this HFY saga. Now, let's get started. The chamber of the Galactic Council trembled with the predator's roar. Armored walls lined with suppression emitters flickered, and for a heartbeat it seemed the very foundations of the hall would split under the force of the creature's rage. Delegates of 100 species recoiled in their seats, their silken robes and jeweled mandibles clattering as the beast hurled itself against the grav-steel restraints. Chains that could anchor battle cruisers stretched, screeched, then sparked under the strain. The predator's eyes burned gold like twin suns, its armored hide splitting light into jagged reflections as it twisted, desperate to shred anything within reach. The council had declared it uncontainable long before today, yet pride had demanded a demonstration. Pride now looked like terror. Arinian delegates screeched and flattened against the wall as the beast's claws raked within a hand's breadth of his dais. Others hissed or croaked, some hiding behind guards, most praying that the restraints held. The chairwoman of the council slammed her staff, its echo thundering above the noise. "Behold the apex scourge," she cried, her voice breaking with strain. "It cannot be controlled. No chain, no field, no master." Her words rippled through the chamber, feeding the delegates' fear. "It killed 3,000 in the Battle of Ganifar. It toppled war machines older than your civilizations. It is proof that some forces exist only to destroy." Yet in the third tier of the audience seats, one man did not flinch. Captain Marcus Hale sat with his arms folded across his chest, his expression carved from stone. The uniform of Earth's depleted Marine Corps still clung to his broad frame, though his commission had ended years ago. A jagged scar traced his jawline, and his eyes carried the quiet watchfulness of a soldier long accustomed to chaos. Where other species saw a nightmare, Marcus studied it like an old acquaintance. The predator's gaze broke suddenly from its thrashing, its head swinging as though sniffing through the waves of alien fear. The chains groaned, taut as bowstrings, and then its golden eyes fixed on him. The hall fell into eerie silence. Delegates leaned forward in disbelief, some muttering, some trembling as the predator's chest heaved once, twice, then stilled. It sat. The silence deepened until the sound of breathing itself seemed forbidden. The predator, the galaxy's nightmare, lowered its body to the floor, muscles coiled but no longer straining. Its jaws parted in a guttural rumble, not of fury but of recognition. And Marcus Hale, without rising from his seat, tilted his head slightly and said almost conversationally, "Easy now." Every alien eye widened as the predator obeyed. The golden gaze never left Marcus's face, yet the tension in its form melted like ice under fire. It pressed its claws against the stone floor, drew them back, and waited. "What sorcery is this?" shrieked the Rinian, his mandibles clicking so fast they blurred. "What trick of pheromone or psychic link? It must be coincidence," another snapped, though his voice cracked. "The beast is exhausted. It merely collapsed." But the predator's tail lashed once, twice, then stilled again as Marcus raised a single hand. There was no mistaking the cause. Even the chairwoman's mouth fell open, her staff trembling in her grasp. "Impossible," she whispered, though billions of watching eyes across the holostreams knew what they saw. Marcus rose finally, unhurried, boots echoing against the marble floor as he stepped closer. His presence did not inflame the predator but steadied it further. The beast's great head tilted, its golden eyes softening with something not even its captors dared imagine: restraint. He stopped within a dozen paces, far closer than any sane being would dare. His voice was steady, low, almost gentle, though each syllable carried the weight of a soldier who had spoken under gunfire. "They think you're a monster. They don't know better." His words were not for the council. They were for the predator. The council erupted into overlapping arguments. Some cried for immediate extermination, others demanded to know the human's method, still others accused Earth of breeding these terrors in secret. Guards leveled energy lances at both man and beast, but none dared fire. Marcus ignored them. His gaze stayed on the predator, and the predator, impossibly, remained at rest. The chairwoman pounded her staff again, desperate to reclaim authority. "Contain this heresy. Remove the human," she ordered, though her command rang hollow against what the chamber had just witnessed. Marcus turned at last, meeting the sea of eyes, insectoid, reptilian, crystalline, scaled, with the unflinching calm of a man who had buried too many comrades to fear the judgment of politicians. "You brought it here to prove it couldn't be controlled," he said evenly. "But it doesn't need chains. It just needed someone willing to see it as more than a weapon. Gasps cut through the hall, the kind that spread like fire among dry brush. In that instant, the narrative of the galaxy's deadliest predator shifted. It was no longer the uncontrollable scourge of war. It was the creature that had, before the eyes of billions, sat at a human's voice. Yet for every delegate stunned into silence, another seethed with fear. If a human could bend such destruction to his will, what else might they command? What might this mean for the fragile balance of power? Marcus stood still, hand hovering just above the predator's armored head, not touching, but close enough that the beast leaned toward it, almost like a hound awaiting approval. He did not smile. He did not gloat. He simply breathed with it, soldier and monster bound by something no alien in the chamber could name. The chairwoman's voice cracked as she tried to close the session. "This proves nothing," she declared, but even she could not steady her shaking hands. The delegates erupted again, this time with voices sharpened by panic and disbelief. The predator shifted only when Marcus stepped back, as though awaiting his permission to move at all. And in the silence between heartbeats, every being present understood one truth that could not be undone. The uncontrollable had just obeyed a human. The fate of humanity, and of the predator itself, had changed forever. The storm of voices in the council chamber still rang in Marcus Hale's memory as he lay on his bunk that night, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Every accusation, every demand for his execution, every trembling whisper of awe, they all blended together until they dissolved into silence. What the galaxy had seen in that chamber wasn't an accident. It was the culmination of something forged years ago, in a place no one in the council cared to remember. His mind returned, as it often did, to the wasteland of Rygos 4. The planet had been little more than a scar across a forgotten quadrant, its skies rusted with storms and its ground littered with the remains of wars waged by mercenaries too greedy to leave the dead buried. His squad had been deployed there as advisors, but the job had turned bloody within days. The mercenaries released their weapon, what the council now called Uncontrollable. Marcus remembered how it came. Not like a beast, not like a soldier, but like a calamity wrapped in muscle and armor. The attack had been annihilation. Vehicles torn in half. Screams cut short under the weight of claws and teeth. His brothers in arms, men who had carried him through fire, scattered, cut down one by one. When the dust settled, Marcus had been bleeding, alone, pinned under rubble with his rifle a few feet out of reach. That was when the predator found him. Its shadow had swallowed the light. 6 meters of terror loomed above him, each step shaking loose gravel from the ruins. Its golden eyes fixed on him, unblinking, unreadable. He had thought death had finally come and he refused to beg. With his throat raw from dust and pain, he had only managed a rasped command, "Do it quick." But the beast did not strike. It sniffed the air around him, claws curling against the stone. A growl rolled through its chest, but it wasn't the roar that had crushed armies. It was something smaller, uncertain. Marcus's hand had twitched toward his knife, then stopped. If it wanted him dead, he would already be bones. So instead, he whispered through bloodied lips, "Easy now. Not your enemy." The predator stilled. Hours passed. The storm screamed above, and Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time he woke, the beast was still there. Sometimes prowling in a circle, sometimes lying with its head on its forelegs, but always near. He realized slowly it wasn't leaving. Over the next days, survival demanded they coexist. Marcus scavenged what little food remained from the wreckage, and the predator hunted carrion in the blasted wilds. Once, it dropped the mangled carcass of a scavenger lizard at his feet and watched as Marcus carved strips with shaking hands. It did not eat until Marcus had taken the first bite. Something wordless grew between them. One night, as the cold bit through his torn uniform, Marcus shivered uncontrollably. The predator shifted closer, pressing its armored flank against his body, its furnace heat bleeding into his frozen limbs. He could feel its breath on his neck, heavy but steady, and for the first time since the massacre, he slept without dreaming of teeth. In the weeks that followed, they became partners in survival. Marcus fashioned a spear from scrap metal. The predator cornered prey and drove it toward him. When raiders returned to pick the battlefield clean, the predator's growl warned him before their engines even reached the horizon. Side by side, they struck back. Marcus from the shadows with rifle fire, the predator bursting from cover with a violence that turned ambush into massacre. Afterward, Marcus leaned against the predator's blood-slick hide, breath heaving, and said with a dry smile, "Guess that makes us a unit." He gave it a name then, Rook. A soldier's name, short and sharp. It didn't matter that the beast would never understand the game of chess or the grim humor of rookies always thrown first into the fire. What mattered was that when Marcus spoke the name aloud, the predator turned its head, ears twitching as if it knew it had been claimed. Rook became more than survival. He became trust. Marcus learned the subtleties of his body language, the shift of his shoulders before he lunged, the rhythm of his breathing when calm, the low rumble that meant danger was near. And Rook learned Marcus's tone, his cadence, the difference between a calm order and a sharp one. Where the council saw uncontrollable violence, Marcus saw choice. Rook never raised claw or fang against him, though it would have been easy. It chose restraint, again and again, for reasons Marcus could never put into words. Eventually rescue came. A human patrol found Marcus battered but alive, and they found Rook standing over him like a sentinel. The soldiers raised weapons, terrified. Marcus, weak but furious, had staggered to his feet between them. "Stand down," he barked, voice carrying the weight of command. "He's with me." Against every regulation, every instinct, his squad listened. They left the battlefield with 2 survivors that day, one human and one nightmare the galaxy would never forget. Years later, the council still argued about how that could be. Some called it manipulation. Others called it madness. But Marcus knew it was something simpler, something the council would never grasp. In the wreckage of Rygos 4, stripped of weapons, allies, and command, he had looked a nightmare in the eye and treated it not as a tool, not as a terror, but as another soldier trapped in the same hell. Now, standing again in the council's chamber with the beast at his side, he carried that truth like a banner. They called it uncontrollable. He called it Rook. And as the council's voices rose into chaos, he saw their fear twist into something sharper: desperation. They weren't asking if the predator could be controlled anymore. They were asking how a human had done what none of them could. The question would not fade. It would fester. And Marcus Hale knew, with a soldier's grim certainty, that Rook's obedience had set fire to a galaxy already dry with suspicion. The council would never let it rest. The uproar did not fade. For 3 days, the council chamber echoed with accusations, demands, and whispers of fear. Entire factions lobbied for execution, insisting the predator was a blight on civilization and that Marcus Hale was either a deceiver or a threat greater than the beast itself. Others, opportunistic and sharp-eyed, argued the opposite. If a human could command the galaxy's nightmare, perhaps humanity itself had untapped value. That possibility unsettled the council more than the predator's presence. On the 4th day, the chairwoman announced a trial. Not one of law but of spectacle. Billions across the galaxy would watch as the claim was tested. If Marcus truly controlled the predator, he would prove it under conditions designed to strip away illusion. If he failed, both man and beast would be executed. The decree rolled like thunder across the hall, and though Marcus stood silent, Rook stirred at his side, a low rumble vibrating through the marble floor. They brought him to the arena of Veros Prime, a coliseum older than some civilizations, its stone bleached by centuries of blood and smoke. The seats rose into the clouds, tier upon tier filled with every species the council could gather. Holostreams carried the event to billions more, eager to see whether the human was a charlatan or something else entirely. Marcus walked at the center, unarmed save for his voice, with Rook padding beside him, claws clicking against the stone. The beast dwarfed him, a living wall of muscle and armor, yet it moved with quiet intent, eyes fixed only on him. Announcers bellowed the terms. Rook would face escalating trials, first machines then living opponents. The council had prepared every cruelty imaginable to provoke frenzy. Marcus's part was simple: command or die. The first trial came swiftly. A swarm of war drones descended, sleek bodies humming with energy. Their cannons spat bolts of plasma, striking the ground in bursts that scorched the air. Rook roared and lunged, claws tearing the first drone from the sky in a shower of sparks. The crowd erupted, half in awe, half in horror. Rook shredded the swarm, each strike efficient, each movement violent grace. But then more drones appeared, dozens, then hundreds, forming a storm of metal around them. Marcus saw the shift, the predator's rage mounting as the machines closed in, golden eyes narrowing with the hunger of battle. The council leaned forward, eager for the proof of uncontrollable wrath. Marcus's voice cut through the din, sharp as a rifle crack. "Rook, heal." The predator froze mid-lunge, jaws open, blood dripping from its teeth. The crowd gasped as it turned, slowly, deliberately, padding back to Marcus's side. It lowered its massive head until it brushed against his hand, chest heaving with restrained violence. The war drones circled, firing warning blasts, but the predator remained still, each muscle quivering under the weight of obedience. The silence in the arena stretched long enough to break the rhythm of countless alien hearts. Marcus did not smile. He merely scratched the armored hide behind Rook's ear, and the beast rumbled like distant thunder. The announcers hesitated, then called for the second trial. Gates thundered open, and from them poured gladiator beasts bred for slaughter. Towering reptilian juggernauts, razor-winged predators bred in laboratories, hulking brutes with tusks sharpened for war, all unleashed together in a tide of flesh and fury. The council meant to overwhelm instinct, to drag Rook into frenzy. They charged as one. The arena shook with their impact, the air thick with their howls. Marcus's eyes never left Rook's. "Defend," he ordered, calm and direct. The predator exploded into motion. It was no longer restraint, but unleashed power channeled with precision. Rook barreled into the nearest juggernaut, claws raking through its scales like parchment. He spun, tail smashing another aside, teeth crushing bone with a wet crack. The crowd screamed as one after another, the challengers fell, torn apart in a blur of claws and fury. Marcus stood steady, unmoving, the eye of the storm. Blood painted the stone, bodies littered the sand, and still Rook fought until the last of the gladiators lay broken. The predator stood atop the ruin, chest heaving, hide slick with gore. The council held its breath. This was the moment, the apex unleashed, drunk on slaughter. Enough. Marcus's word cut through the din like a blade. Rook's head swung instantly toward him. Muscles tensed, breath ragged, the beast's golden eyes flickered with the fire of instinct. But then, slowly, step by step, it descended from the pile of corpses and returned to Marcus's side. Blood dripped from its claws as it lowered itself once more, pressing its head against his arm like a warhound awaiting praise. The arena erupted into chaos. Some screamed witchcraft, others demanded immediate execution, while more still cried out in awe, unable to deny what they had witnessed. A predator that had shredded fleets, broken armies, and defied every shackle had obeyed a single human word before billions of witnesses. Marcus remained silent, one hand resting steady on Rook's armored head. He did not need to gloat. The image alone spoke louder than any words. Man and monster, united not by chains or science, but by trust the galaxy could not comprehend. Above, the chairwoman's voice faltered as she tried to regain control. This proves nothing. But her denial cracked under the weight of the spectacle. Entire factions shouted over her, some calling for humanity's elevation, others screaming of danger. Assassins in the stands debated whether they should strike now or wait. The balance of power trembled and Marcus could feel it. He bent close to Rook, voice so low only the predator could hear. "We've shown them enough." The beast rumbled in response, a sound both gentle and terrifying, and settled against him like stone. As the arena boiled with conflict, Marcus knew the trials had not ended with the beasts or the drones. The true trial was yet to come. It would not be fought with claws or rifles, but with politics, fear, and desperation. And in that war he would have to decide not just whether he could command Rook, but whether he should. The council would not forget what it had seen. Neither would the galaxy. And in their fear, Marcus saw the shadow of battles yet to come. The Colosseum's roar lingered in Marcus Hale's ears long after he and Rook were escorted back to the council's orbital station. The demonstration had silenced no one. Instead, it had split the galaxy into factions more dangerous than ever. Some whispered of alliances, of turning humanity into a keystone species, the only ones able to leash nightmares. Others whispered darker things: assassination, sabotage, eradication. In a galaxy where power meant survival, no one tolerated an advantage they did not control. Marcus knew the look of soldiers plotting in shadow. He had seen it in jungles, deserts, and blasted cities. Now he saw it in polished halls and jeweled eyes. The council chamber had become a battlefield without gunfire, each word a bullet, each vote a blade. His instincts told him one truth: someone would try to remove him before his bond with Rook rewrote the balance of power. In the quiet of his assigned quarters, Marcus cleaned his rifle piece by piece. The weapon was ceremonial here, locked with council restrictions, but old habits kept his hands steady. Rook lay across the chamber floor, golden eyes half-lidded, a low rumble vibrating the walls. Despite his size, the predator looked almost peaceful, head resting on folded claws. Marcus smirked faintly. To think this creature had ripped apart fleets, yet in his presence, it acted like a soldier on watch, waiting for orders. A chime broke the silence. Marcus set the rifle aside. The air shifted, the kind of subtle wrongness only veterans noticed. The ventilation hissed slightly off rhythm. The shadows in the corners felt too heavy. His hand moved automatically to his sidearm, even as the door locks snapped open. They came in silence, 3 cloaked figures gliding through the doorway with Predator's precision. Assassins. Marcus fired before the first raised his weapon. The shot punched through a throat, spraying sparks from a cloaked shield generator. The second dove low, hurling a blade that screeched against the wall where Marcus had stood. The third aimed a pulse rifle, then Rook moved. The Predator's roar shook the walls. 6 meters of muscle and fury surged across the chamber, slamming into the intruder with such force the body cracked against steel. Claws tore through cloaks, revealing armored assassins trained by guilds older than humanity's first rockets. But even their precision faltered before the apex that had shredded armies. Rook crushed the second under a single swipe, blood spraying across the polished floor. The third assassin fired wildly, bolts sizzling inches from Marcus's head. Marcus dropped low, rolled, and put 2 rounds through the attacker's visor. The body crumpled at his feet, smoke curling from the wounds. Silence fell again, broken only by Rook's growl. Marcus scanned the corpses, then the ruined doorway. His suspicion was confirmed. The council had not sent guards to protect him. Someone had left him open. Deliberately. More would come. Over the next days, the station seemed to breathe with paranoia. Guards averted their eyes when Marcus passed. Delegates kept their distance, whispering too softly for translators to catch. News feeds twisted the arena spectacle into propaganda, some hailing him as savior, others branding him a menace. Everywhere, eyes followed Rook, wide with fear or burning with hunger for control. Yet in the small hours when the station dimmed its lights, Marcus glimpsed another truth. Rook was changing. The Predator that once prowled without rest now lingered at his side, not from obligation but something closer to loyalty. When Marcus cleaned wounds carved during the trials, Rook rumbled like a machine at ease. When Marcus lay back, exhausted, the beast curled protectively nearby, massive head resting just within reach. Once, Marcus even chuckled despite himself as Rook attempted to wedge his enormous skull onto his lap, like some warhound that did not know its own size. The galaxy would never understand moments like that. They saw only the killer. Marcus saw the soldier. But the shadows moved faster. One evening, as council delegates debated humanity's fate, explosions rocked the lower decks. Marcus grabbed his gear and sprinted toward the chaos, Rook close behind. Smoke poured from ruptured halls, alarms wailing. Through the haze, figures emerged, mercenaries armed with disruptors, cutting down guards as they advanced. A full-strike team, bold enough to attack the council's heart. Marcus dropped to cover and fired, his shots surgical, each target falling with precision. Rook barreled into the ranks, scattering mercenaries like leaves in a storm. Yet amid the slaughter, Marcus noticed something crucial: civilians cowering in the corridors. The mercenaries tried to use them as shields. Rook did not hesitate. He tore through attackers with surgical violence, but each time innocents stumbled close, his claws shifted wide, his strikes adjusted. He did not harm them. Not once. The image was undeniable. The Predator that had once slaughtered indiscriminately now chose restraint. Obedience was one thing, this was judgment. And billions would soon see it, because the council's surveillance drones caught everything. By the time reinforcements arrived, the mercenaries lay broken, the halls painted in crimson arcs. Marcus stood in the smoke, rifle low, Rook looming behind him, golden eyes glowing through the haze. Civilians whispered not in terror but awe. The council convened in emergency session. Some raged at the security breach, others at the footage already spreading through the galaxy. They demanded explanations, demanded control, demanded Marcus hand Rook over for study. But no one could deny the recordings. The apex Predator ignored innocence, fought only enemies, and yielded to a single human voice. Marcus faced them without flinching, his voice steady. You call it uncontrollable. Yet you've seen it choose restraint. You've seen it protect. His gaze swept across the chamber, daring them to look away. It's not a weapon. It's not your experiment. It's my partner. And it won't heal to anyone else. The chamber erupted into chaos once more. Some shouted for alliance. Others shouted for blood. The fragile balance teetered on the edge of collapse. Marcus felt Rook shift behind him, tail lashing once. He knew this storm was only beginning. Today had been assassins and mercenaries. Tomorrow would be armies. The galaxy would not stop until it decided whether to destroy him or bow to the truth he embodied. And Marcus Hale, scarred soldier of Earth, knew one thing with grim certainty: they would have to come through him first. The council chamber had never felt so brittle. Every delegate's voice carried the weight of centuries, yet all Marcus heard was the ticking of the inevitable. The assassination attempts, the mercenary strike, the footage spreading like wildfire across every channel, none of it had cooled the storm. It had only sharpened it. Allies begged for humanity's protection. Rivals demanded humanity's elimination. And through it all, the predator at Marcus's side was the only constant, golden eyes unblinking, claws flexing on the polished floor like thunder waiting to fall. The decision came cloaked as diplomacy. A motion for custody. Transfer of the predator to neutral oversight, where it could be safely studied. The delegates dressed their hunger in pretty words, but Marcus knew the truth. They wanted Rook torn apart, dissected until nothing remained of what had once shaken their empires. And they wanted Marcus silenced before his bond could inspire others. He said nothing at first. He let the chamber rage, accusations clashing like blades, translators straining to keep pace with venom flung in a dozen languages. When the noise reached its peak, Marcus rose. His voice cut through like a rifle shot. "You mistake me for a volunteer. You mistake him," he nodded toward Rook, whose massive frame loomed above the assembly, "for a trophy. Neither of us belong to you. Neither of us will heal." The uproar was instantaneous. Some shouted for guards. Others cried treason. But beneath the chaos, Marcus saw something new, fear tinged with respect. The galaxy's deadliest predator could have killed them all, yet it sat silent, waiting for a human's command. That image was more dangerous than any blade. The council never had a chance to settle the argument. The first strike came without warning, a blast that split the chamber wall and sent fragments raining down. Outside, alarms howled as fleets moved into position. Rival factions had grown tired of debate. The coup had begun. Marcus was already moving, dragging a wounded delegate to cover as soldiers poured in. Rook answered with violence, crashing into armored intruders, claws ripping through reinforced plating like paper. The chamber dissolved into chaos, alliances shattering, weapons drawn in every direction. No side cared about truth anymore. They wanted the predator. Marcus fought with brutal clarity, every shot placed, every movement measured. He knew he was not fighting to win a battle. He was fighting to prove a point. Every time Rook shielded civilians, every time the predator turned its fury only on armed combatants, the truth spread. Drones captured it. Delegates who survived would remember. In the middle of slaughter, the predator chose restraint because Marcus commanded it. Smoke thickened, fire licking the ceiling. Marcus felt the weight of inevitability closing. If they stayed, they would be overwhelmed. He made the only choice left. "Rook with me." The predator thundered to his side, lowering its massive head like a war beast awaiting orders. Together they carved a path out of the chamber, Marcus's rifle spitting precise death, Rook tearing through enemies with devastating grace. The corridors of the orbital station became rivers of blood. Yet amid the carnage, civilians clung to the walls, trembling but alive. They watched the apex predator stride past them without harm. Some whispered prayers. Some whispered his name. By the time Marcus and Rook reached the outer decks, the full scale of the coup was clear. Warships blockaded the station, weapons primed. Entire factions had gambled everything on seizing control tonight. Marcus stood at the viewport, sweat mixing with ash on his skin, and felt the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. He had no army, no chain of command. Only a predator at his side and a choice that would decide how the galaxy remembered them. He keyed the station's broadcast controls, overriding council restrictions with codes he should not have known but had learned long ago in another war. The feed went live across every channel. His voice carried into millions of homes, into barracks and marketplaces, into starships drifting in silence. Behind him, the predator filled the frame, blood on its claws, golden eyes burning. "You see what they fear," Marcus said, his tone steady despite the inferno around him. "They call it uncontrollable. They call it a monster. But you've seen the truth. You've seen it shield the weak. You've seen it strike only when threatened. You've seen it follow one voice. Humanity's voice. My voice." He let the words hang, the silence heavier than any roar. Then he leaned forward, eyes sharp as knives. "If they kill me, they kill proof that strength does not need chains. If they kill him, they kill the only predator that chose restraint. So decide. Decide what kind of galaxy you want. But know this, no cage you build will hold him. No threat you speak will sway me. We are not yours to claim." The transmission ended with the predator lowering its head beside Marcus, a gesture so deliberate it could not be mistaken. Submission not to the galaxy but to a single human. The coup fractured in that moment. Fleets hesitated, soldiers faltered. No one wanted to be the first to test what they had just witnessed. Delegates turned on each other, some fleeing, others ordering retreat. The fragile alliances built on fear cracked under the weight of a truth too visible to ignore. The apex predator had already chosen its allegiance. The fighting burned through the night, but momentum shifted. Not because Marcus commanded armies, but because the image of Rook shielding civilians, standing beside a human rather than above him, spread faster than any fleet could move. By dawn, factions withdrew, unwilling to be remembered as the ones who defied what billions had now witnessed. When the fires finally died, Marcus stood amid ruins. The council chamber lay in shambles, its great banners burned, its polished floors scarred. Survivors whispered of rebuilding, of fragile peace, but Marcus knew peace was not what he had forged tonight. He had forged an understanding. Humanity could no longer be dismissed as fragile. Not when the deadliest predator in the galaxy had chosen to obey a man. In the quiet that followed, Marcus sat on the wreckage of a shattered dais. His rifle lay across his knees. Rook settled beside him, massive head nudging his shoulder, rumble vibrating through his bones. For a moment, soldier and predator simply breathed, bound by something no council could legislate. Marcus allowed himself a faint smile. He had no illusions. Wars would come. Assassins would try again. Politicians would twist the truth until it bent to their hunger. But tonight had planted a seed. Tonight had shown the galaxy that humanity was not prey. Humanity could command what no empire dared control. And as Rook's golden eyes closed, resting not as a monster but as a guardian, Marcus understood the irony that would haunt every council chamber for generations. The universe's deadliest predator slept in a human's shadow, not because it was chained but because it chose to. The storm was not over. But Marcus Hale was ready for the next strike.